trees in the backwoods night. Red lights cutting through the pine in flight. Bigfoot stomping with his youngling beard. Whispers of tales that ain't too clear. UFOs buzzing solo through the haze. Howling banshees set the forest ablaze. Jersey devil howls, drink rays to the sky. Drunken cryptids party until the morning's night. Yeah. It's showtime, running wild in the moonlight. Stars burn down, watch the freaks all take flight.
To good times.
Raise your glasses to the mysteries divine. It's showtime, let the cryptids realign.
And welcome back to another episode of the Drunken Cryptids. I'm your host, Matthew Orton, and I want to give a quick shout out to blademedia.com. Let me tell you guys, Blade Media, Dylan over there did a great job with the logo, great job with the website. Dylan, I appreciate all the hard work you put into everything. I can tell you guys right now, if you need any multimedia work done, you definitely need to go to blademedia.com. It's BLAYED media.com. Of course, the link's posted in the show notes. So please go check him out. He's local here in Arkansas, and I like to shop local. I'm a kind of a, local guy. I like small town business people. So events coming up. We do have the Arkansas Paranormal Expo at the end of October 26th. It'll flash up on YouTube. I get the dates wrong all the time, so Tommy has to correct me. So you guys, but it's the last weekend of October. But October 4th, I am going to be a speaker for the Ohio Bigfoot Jamboree 2, and that's in Ada, Ohio. You definitely want to check it out. Go over to Cryptids of the Corn, check their podcast out, check the links out. If you're in the area, you're going to be in the area, you guys check them out. If you're not already following Cryptids of the Corn, you have to do it. And of course, I got to shout out to my other podcast buddies out there, Chumming with the Spears, Miss Monsters and Mullets, Nevermore Hollows, and of course, Uncomfortable with Eric Slodgy. I haven't talked to Eric in a while. I kind of need to reach out to him. Yeah, raw and unfiltered. I love how I do this. Yeah, Eric, if you're listening, I'm sorry, buddy. It's been really crazy and chaotic. And of course, we're going to say hi to our buddy Todd Neese. Everybody loves Todd Neese. But let's see here. What other things do we have going on? Coming up, that should be about it. Also, of course, everybody, Tommy is going through some hard times right now on the health side of the house for him. We do have some links posted up on the Facebook page. If you would please, if you do want to help Tommy out, greatly appreciate it as well. If you do want to help support the show, we should have the Buy Me a Coffee up and running by the time this episode airs. That's there. The Patreon is there as well. Any help is appreciated, of course. And if you guys like it, share, keep sharing it. I'm seeing the comments, you guys. I really am. I appreciate everything. If this is your first episode, check us out. We have a lot of fun. I do have a great guest coming on here shortly, so you're going to have a lot of fun with this one. And, of course, all my guests have been great. I don't care what anybody says. I love every guest that I've had on, so shout out to my former guests. And then, let's see here. And, of course, if you've had an encounter and you want to come on the show, email me, drunkencryptids@gmail.com, or shoot us a message on any of our social media platforms. Looking forward to hear it. But let's get into tonight's guest. So Andy is coming in tonight. Surprisingly enough, I do about every other week or so, I will jump on and I will be kind of a co-host, I guess, or a guest speaker or a guest, person on a local, used to be a radio show, but now it's kind of a multimedia show. And it's a lot of fun. He was a really big DJ here in the mornings. He was, was infamously known as Angry Patrick, and he reached out to me last summer about coming on and helping out and, being a guest co-host, which, completely honored. Blew me away that he remembered me from years and years and years ago. So it was a true honor. But, I was talking, Andy and me were he was typing in the comments and I was firing back a little bit, and we had a good banner, and he emailed, and we ended up talking and all your stuff. But he's got some really, really neat encounters that he's had in his neck of the woods. So, without further ado, let's bring him on. Andy, how you doing tonight?
What's up, Matt? How you doing, man?
Now, if it was about 60 degrees cooler, I'd go about 50, 40 degrees cooler. I'd be a lot happier.
It won't be no time. We'll be crying, wishing it was hot again.
No, I won't.
Most people do.
I know. I mean, well, my problem is with the humidity down here. I mean, I sweat. That's all I do is sweat. And, going on the past couple of weeks doing investigations and such, I mean, I was changing my shirt. When we get done with the last video of our last investigation, you'll see I've changed shirts because I was just soaking wet from the sweat.
I'm a sweater too, and I swear that makes me mosquito bait.
Same, but they like my ankles.
Mine's my face.
They love my ankles. If I just spray around my ankles, I can sit outside and not be bugged. Now, if I go out in the woods, the ticks, on the other hand, they love me.
Always do.
Ticks.
It's that sweet, sweet blood.
But yeah, because I'm a sweetheart. You just ask Talina; she'll tell you that.
That's my problem too. I'm too sweet.
So what was funny? Speaking of my mom, and I love my mom. And I was like, I will. She's like, you're just too sweet, and the ticks just love you. So you're just too sweet. And I was like, thanks, Mom.
I doubt my mom would say that about me, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, I'm sure she would.
Oh, I doubt it.
No matter what, deep down at all, Mama still loves us. We may upset them. We may do things against what they don't want us to do. Yeah, I mean, I went against everything that my mom wanted me to do in life. I went I went and chased that dream down, and now I'm doing this. And so I know my mom, when she talks to her friends, and she's like, yeah, he was in the woods looking for Bigfoot again, or he's going to a haunted house. Yeah, I am actually going to Kansas City in September. I'm linking up with Chumming with the Spirits, and they're gonna take me to the Sally house. I'm gonna go rescue.
You were talking about some of that.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about it. I'm trying to keep myself away from knowing too much information because I want to go into it blind.
Right.
I really do. I want to go into it blind. I kind of want to, go into it. Did not think I'd have an encounter or anything, and I did, which made it even cooler. But this one, whatever's been going on, Chummy's been there a few times, and it's left some marks on them. And I don't mean like physical, but I mean this. Left some strong mental impressions for them. Yeah. So my take on it, and so I'm pretty excited about that.
I look forward to hearing what your take is on that.
Neat was about a month ago. I was going to 7 Brew. Yeah, I like 7 Brew out there, guys. I do. Hey, look, I'm now 50. I can like whatever coffee I want. But
I'm not old enough to drink coffee.
Oh, I have a hot
coffee for old people.
Hey, look, I've been drinking. It's nonstop. I will drink hot coffee in this weather. I mean,
I'll drink pond water before I drink coffee.
Oh God, Tony popped in yesterday for a few minutes. We just got new shoes on the Jeep, and he popped in yesterday to look at them. And I stepped inside and warmed up a cup of coffee. Came out, and he looked at me and he goes, "I'm not surprised." And I was like, "No, gotta have my coffee." So, but we still had 7 Brew, and one of the baristas came out, getting our order and everything, and he goes, "Hey, so what are y'all doing today?" And I had Jacob with me, and I was like, "Yeah, we're going Bigfoot hunting." And he chuckled, and Jacob goes, "No, really, we're going out looking for Bigfoot." And the guy goes, "What, really?" And I said, "Yeah." So I was talking about the show and everything. He goes, "Oh, you need to go check out the Sally house." And I started laughing. And I was like, ironic you should mention that because I'm going up there in September. So everybody knows about the Sally house. And somehow I know of it. I just don't know it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm excited about that. Well, let's jump into you.
Check it out. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This is your show, brother. So I'll let you take it away and let's, tell us what happened.
Okay. Feel free to pop in and ask any questions. So it's kind of a detail-oriented story. So anyways, back in, I want to say it was around 2006. I was younger than I am now, of course. I want to say about 18. Me and a buddy decided we wanted to take four-wheelers up and camp in a popular spot on one of the side of the four-wheeler trails there. And side-by-sides and all that. And the trails were narrow.
I lost you there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Okay, so you and your buddy took some side-by-sides.
Yeah, well, this was back before side-by-sides. This was
Okay.
four-wheelers.
Oh, four-wheelers.
And, yep, the trails were narrow back then. Jeeps, side-by-sides, all that hadn't come in and widened the trails and all that yet. And that plays a big part in this story. So it had been fairly wet weather from what I recall. And within the two four-wheelers, we hauled in firewood. And I remember we had to haul in some wood for a fire because everything out where we were going would have been wet. So ended up, as we were going in, you've got to cross Shoal Creek 4 or 5 times going up through there. There's several places you cross, and it's deep. And he was hauling the firewood, wound up lost quite a bit of it off in the creek, so we didn't have any dry wood when we got to where we were going. Threw up our tent. Now, try to paint this picture so you can kind of see it. This is at the foot of a cliff that's kind of an L shape. So we're basically inside of a 90-degree corner, and you've got a rock wall on 2 sides. And it's a really, really pretty spot. A little creek flows through there. There's a little fire pit and whatnot. Always thought it'd been a cool spot to camp. So we set up camp, threw up our tent. I packed in a pot and some stuff to cook chili with so that we'd have something to eat. Charcoal, so we would at least have something to get, a hot fire going. And we thought, well, we can throw some semi-wet wood on some charcoal and maybe get a decent hot fire. Well, we got it hot enough to cook a pot of chili, and that was about all she wrote. So we tucked in well after dark, decided to bed down for the night, and that's when everything went upside down. We were woken up by something that came through our camp that ran through and absolutely just destroyed everything. Large, loud crash, boom, bang, knocking everything over that we'd had set up. And of course, I immediately jumped up, ran outside. I always carried a little 20-gauge single-shot shotgun. Had a flashlight, was looking around trying to figure out what it was. Couldn't see anything, and something happened with the flashlight. I do remember that, or maybe I hadn't picked it up yet. Just ran outside with a shotgun to try to figure out what in the world was going on. And something passed by me again, close enough that I could feel kind of the breeze off of it. And the most standoutish part of this whole memory was whenever this thing passed by me, I could feel the wind. It was close enough I could feel the wind from it, but I felt it on my face. Now, I say that to say this. I'm not a little guy. I'm about 6'4", about 255. So I'm fairly tall. And something breezed by me, and I could feel that in my face. Well, that automatically tells you, well, that probably wasn't a black bear because they're not more than about 4 foot at the shoulder running on all fours. And the other thing that really stood out about it was how heavy that the footsteps sounded. When this thing was running, it was really, really heavy on its feet. And I remember thinking, well, that, first thought was it a mountain lion? What the heck we got going on here? And whenever it passed by me again, that's whenever I kind of started to I couldn't quite grasp or register what just happened. So we wound up firing up one of the four-wheelers, turning on some headlights, revving some lights, and throwing some leaves and stuff in the fire to try to get some smoke going. We wound up, got some wet leaves to smoking pretty good, and that was kind of the end of it. Whatever it was just disappeared. But it was very, very bright in my memory of how heavy this thing sounded on its feet, and it didn't necessarily sound like it was running on 4 feet. Once I thought back about it, I thought, I was convinced it was a bear. Until, after something like that happens and you kind of sit and you replay it through your head and you kind of recall all of it. And I thought, well, I could feel the wind on my face. What would have passed by my face, being well over 6 feet, that would have been that tall? And me and both my buddy Dustin were both just like, he never would come out of the tent. He was terrified. He was a city kid and he didn't have any clue to what was going on. He was just basically trusted me to save his life, and I fired a couple shots with the shotgun after we got the four-wheeler fired up, and it was dead silent the rest of the night. I remember, didn't really hear much of anything going on, no bugs, no birds in the morning when everything come up. It was very, very eerily quiet after that whole thing, and still to this day, I can't really explain exactly what it was other than the fact that it would have been taller than a normal sized black bear in the Mount Magazine area. So that often, I don't want to say that it was a Bigfoot or anything like that just right off because it sounds crazy. But if you'd have been there in the time and think about, everything, the way that it lined out and you could feel the wind off of it kind of past your face and the way that it sounded on its feet, it's always made me wonder. And I've told that story several times, and I've had, it had to have been a bear, it had to have been a whatever. But I mean, how do you really know?
But you really can't know unless you were there.
Right?
And that's
It
where
was.
a lot of people don't understand. You may have mentioned this at the beginning of the story, and I may have missed it. If so, I apologize. About what time of year was this?
This would have been in the springtime.
Okay, because Arkansas in the spring does. We get a lot of rain. So I was curious
Yeah,
about like
it
the
was.
temperature.
It was fairly wet, and we knew ahead of time that we're not going to go out there and find dry wood for a fire. So let's take some with us. We had some split firewood, and Goober got up on a rock, kind of on the camber in the creek, and lost most of our firewood, all but one or two pieces off in the creek. So it's like, well, okay, now we don't have a fire, but we pressed on and went anyway, and decided to make the best of the situation, and wound up being a pretty wild night. And of course, we didn't go back to sleep the rest of the night.
No, I don't blame you. Okay, so all right, when you said you fired your shotgun off, did you fire it up in the air, or what direction did you fire it?
But yeah, just a random upshot.
Upshot. Okay, and it just kind of ran through. I mean, it
It
destroyed
came
your
through
campsite.
twice. It ran through and knocked a bunch of stuff over as it ran through. And I came out of the tent, and then it came back through. Like I said, we were in a 90-degree corner. So there wasn't really anywhere for it to go other than back the way that it came. And that's when it passed between me and the tent. And that's whenever I could feel the wind off of it.
Did you catch any smell or anything?
No, not that I remember. I don't remember catching any of the stout, musty smells, like you hear on some of the reports and, Bigfoot encounters and stuff. I don't remember anything like that. No.
Yeah. Well, my theory on the smell for them is it's almost like a gland. It's where they can
Right.
kind of like a skunk gland. They can almost turn it on and
Mhm.
off, spray it or whatnot. And that's just my theory on it because there's a lot of reports out there, a lot of encounters to where there really isn't, any
Right.
aroma. And then there's some where it's just like overpowering.
Mhm. Yeah, just the part that stood out the most to me was when it came by, you could feel the wind off of it, and that it was a higher level, and that how heavy it sounded on its feet.
Like
I mean, it's
a thump, thump, thump.
yeah, a really hard thud. This is down around a creek bed where the dirt is really, really hard packed, and then there's some rocks and stuff around where the actual creek bed is, but it really, really hard packed dirt. And I mean, I couldn't have made this sound if I stomped my foot as hard as I could. It was a very, very loud, audible thump as it ran, and it didn't sound super fast. It's not like it blew through with the speed of a cat. This thing was big and fairly slow, it seemed.
That's great. I like how you brought it. That it was slow because a lot of people, they'll have reports of it being, fast. It was like there and gone. But if you
Yeah,
look at even like on the Patty film, I mean, she's not like moving quick. I mean, she's not going slow either, but she has a steady pace going. I think toward the speed sometimes, I think, just because of how well they can easily adapt to their environment and camouflage.
yeah, I don't think that it was moving any faster than what I could, being a pretty good sized dude. But at the same time, whatever it was pretty large in height. Definitely larger than, like I mentioned, a Arkansas sized black bear or, a mountain lion wouldn't be as heavy on its feet, and it wouldn't be as tall, it wouldn't be over waist high.
And it
So
wouldn't be bipedal.
those are the two largest animals that are up there in those woods. So what was bigger than either one of those?
Sasquatch.
It wasn't a person, out in pitch black dark running around. There was no moonlight, there was no light at all. It was just pitch black darkness in a 90-degree foot of a cliff, one way in, one way out. And yeah, like I said, I can't explain what it was, but all the signs kind of point to being something, a whole lot larger than a bear. All that's left would be like a Sasquatch type animal, or whatever you want to classify them as.
Yeah, so I was curious, and so what I want to go to the fire that y'all were trying to do. So when you were, you got the charcoal out, and you use that, try and get a good bed of coals. And I've done that with my own fire pit in my backyard as well. Get a good base of coals going, especially if I got damp wood.
Yep.
Try and draw it out. And was it just smoking a lot?
Yeah, we had a fairly smoky fire at bedtime. It wasn't putting off a whole lot of light, But I had broke up a lot of smaller sticks and tried to get some stuff inside of that hot bed of coals, and some of the smaller stuff dried out enough where it would burn. So we had a pretty good smoky bed of coals all night. But any of the bigger stuff, the what we found on the ground was soaked from rain for probably a week straight, and what we brought with us and fished back out of the creek was completely soaked. So we didn't have anything of any size, just a lot of smaller type stuff, and we were throwing handfuls of leaves in there, but they were wet, so you don't really get much more than just a whole lot of smoke.
Yeah. Well, because I'm curious whether this is what maybe you thought there was a fire and the smoke is what attracted it.
It's possible. I mean, I've had animals come up before, at a camp. Whenever you cook a pot of chili, with an open top, that aroma drifts for a long ways.
Oh, yeah.
And we always have, coons, possums, armadillos, occasional coyote, something will come up there, bobcat.
Yeah,
Seen about everything come to a pot of chili. And that's why I had the shotgun. Kind of expected, well, I'm cooking a pot of chili, and I don't go anywhere without a gun. It's the woods and it's Arkansas. So I always pack my little 20 gauge single shot that I carried with me back at the time.
Yeah, that's why I tell everybody. I mean, they'll see pictures of us out in the woods on investigations, and they're like, "You guys are armed? You guys trying to kill?" I was like, "No, there's other things in the woods."
Absolutely. I mean, I'd go in the woods without a gun before I would a Walmart or something. You're safer in the woods, but always carry.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the woods here. I mean, there's a lot that can happen. Like my big running joke whenever we go on investigations is, all right, first one bit by a snake buys the beer.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah,
absolutely.
That's how that works. So you don't think it was a puma? You don't think it was a bear, and it wasn't a person?
I mean, so left.
Yeah. I mean, will you tell me what do you think? Because you're the guy on the ground. I'm going off of your.
If it seemed heavy on its feet and it seems, bipedal, just from thinking of the footsteps and counting, recalling in a memory of how it was running and being taller than me, at well over 6 feet. All the signs kind of point that way. Didn't ever lay eyes on it. Couldn't tell you, but certainly seems to put the arrow kind of pointing towards what would be like a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot or something of that nature.
Or the Ozark Howler.
Anything.
I know.
But a bear or a mountain lion had to have been bigger, had to have been taller.
And here's the thing, too, and you mentioned earlier as well, you said that, you told the story a few times of people like, oh, it was a bear, or it was this. And a lot of people are real skeptical, and they want to play devil's advocate, and I understand that. But, when somebody, like, prime example, me, with my background, with what I've done, being in the woods a ton, I know what a bear sounds like. I know, yep. I'm from Utah. I know what, a mountain lion sounds like. I know how they move, and they're quiet. Don't get me wrong. They're absolutely quiet. That's why they're stealthy hunters.
They wouldn't be heavy on their feet.
Exactly. I had one night, right before I joined the Army, me and a high school buddy went backpacking for a couple of days up the South Canyon there in Ogden, and went up on one of the trails. And it was our second night up there. We had found a similar spot to what you described. We had a creek, and the only way to get to this little spot was across this creek. And that night we had a good fire going, though it wasn't raining, so we had a good fire going, and we had a little radio, and we were just barely able to pick up one of the radio stations, and we were sitting there just playing. The volume was turned down low, so you'd barely hear it, and there's something started walking through the creek, and we were both like, "What?" I mean, yeah. So and then it came out of the creek, and we could walk around the camp. But just outside the firelight, we turned our flashlights on, and there'd be nothing there. But this thing walked around our little campsite a few times and then was gone.
Yeah, that's this happened well into the middle of the night. We'd been in the tent for a while, so there's not really any indicator that the thing had been there for a while, or if it just randomly came through. It could have been there for a little while and decided to run through and try to convince us to leave, which, don't get me wrong, it worked. We were ready to roll, but we had a lot of stuff to pack up, and, being in the middle of nowhere, there's no phone service, there's no anything out there in that spot. And that's what I told Dustin. I was like, let's just stick it out.
Yeah, at that point in time, it's easier to do that.
plenty shotgun shells to, hold my ground, and it just seemed better to me at the time to we'll just hold our ground right here, and if the thing comes back, then I'll deal with it.
Because I'm just wondering whether or not there was, you know, the smoke from the smoky fires what attracted it.
There's no way to know, and I told all that story. And, back at the time, I didn't really put two and two together that it could have been a Bigfoot. I was just always just kind of, well, it wasn't a mountain lion, it wasn't a bear, kind of what was it? Well, that was in the springtime. Well, that fall around Halloween, we always had big Halloween bash back then, and we'd watch scary movies. And somebody brought over the Boggy Creek Monster, the documentary from down in Falk, Arkansas, the Falk Monster and all that. And sitting and watching through that's when my wheels started turning, and I was like, holy crap.
No, yeah. What's funny is that there was somebody else, and I can't remember who it was I was talking to, and they had something weird happen to them, and they happened to put on, it was either on TV or something popped on, and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Same thing. And, because I think that down here in the South, the Sasquatch down here are smaller than they are up north. I don't think they're going to get any larger than 7 feet. And that's because of, the environment here. It's hot. Let's just be honest. It's hot. Our predators down here are smaller than they are up north. And we're only talking like 3 states away. But that's still a pretty good change in temperature. The further north you go, the bears get bigger, the predators get bigger. And the further south you head towards the equator, they get smaller. The jaguar.
I've never really thought about that way. Yeah, right.
So with you saying it was going to rush past you, I think that, it was right up, and you're about 6 foot, so it's going to be at your height. And I think a lot of sightings down here in the South are due to, they get written off a lot to being like, oh, that was, had to be a person. Because, we're under the belief, coming out of the stories out of the Pacific Northwest and up north that, they're, 8, 9, 10 feet tall.
And that
down
was,
here, I think they're only about 7. And I think down even further south, like in Florida and even into Louisiana, I think the tallest they're going to get is going to be 6.5, maybe.
Yeah, that would, if you were to ask me about how tall I thought this thing was, well, it was over 6 feet, but I don't feel like it was 8 feet tall. It didn't seem like it was that big. It's just one of those things you just have to be in the moment and feel the situation. But thinking back, I don't think it was 8, 9 feet tall. It was my height, maybe a little bit bigger, if I had to guess. It was within 6 or 7 feet of me when it passed by. So if it wanted to take me out, it could have. I was standing there with a shotgun, fumbling through my pocket, trying to dig out a flashlight. So if it meant me harm, whether it could see me or if it couldn't, I don't know. It ran through the camp and knocked a bunch of stuff over and crashed through the middle of my little table that I had set up and my chili pot and all that stuff on it. And maybe it could see, maybe it couldn't, but it passed close enough to me that it could have, took me out with it if it wanted to, and it didn't. So I don't know if it saw me, if it didn't see me. I don't have any idea. But it was certainly big enough, whatever it was, that it could have wiped me out pretty good if it hit me in a full run.
What about any other noise? Did it make any growls or anything?
Didn't hear any growls, any grunts, didn't hear anything. Maybe almost a little bit of labored breathing as it was running. That's what I always kind of pointed to. Well, it sounded like a bear when it was running. You could hear some labored breathing as it was running in between the big heavy footsteps, but that was it.
Okay, I'm only quiet because I'm like, wow, okay, because very rarely do you hear anybody say, I could hear the breathing. Normally they're like, I heard a grunting or anything.
Yeah, no grunt, no growling. It was just, if you had been running hard for even, 40 yards, 50 yards, you would start to get a little bit of a labored breathing before you get your rhythm down. Where if you're, sitting still and your heart rate's leveled and you take off running, well, your heart rate's going to come up before it levels off and you get into your pace. Well, this just seemed like it was just labored breathing as it was running.
That's actually really cool. I'm not going to lie. That's really cool.
It was freaky being, 18.
Well, no, I mean the breathing part, the fact you're breaking down you can hear breathing. That to me is really cool.
Oh, I still remember it very vividly. And that's, I haven't talked to my buddy that was with me up there in probably 10 years. And then a couple of years ago, we had crossed paths on Facebook or something. And I mentioned to him, I was like, dude, you remember that night we were out camping? He's like, man, I just told somebody that story the other day. It was absolutely unbelievable. He's like, I thought we were going to die. I was like, well, I was going to stand and fight. He's just a city kid. It could have been a turtle and he'd have been scared to death of it. But yeah, it was. He still tells the story too, because he was the one back in the tent and peeking out, and what is it? What's going on? And I started shooting, and he just went to straight. It's a wonder he didn't have a heart attack and just fall over after I fired the gun a couple of times.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, did y'all pull up camp before dawn, or did you wait till dawn?
No, I ended up back in the tent and laid back down, but it was a 2-room tent, so we kind of had our own little space. And I kept my side about a quarter of the way unzipped just so I could hear. And there was a lot of leaves around, and if something had come up fairly slow, I could hear the leaves crunching. I was laying there with my shotgun with a shell in it, ready to roll. And I just laid there till the sun come up. And then after sunrise, enough where you could see to walk outside and see around your surroundings, everything, we packed up and rolled out. And come back and started telling the story, and everybody thought, oh, y'all are crazy. Y'all just got out in the woods and got scared. It's like, you don't understand. I'll spend my life in the woods. I've seen things and heard things that I can't explain, but this was different.
Did you see any tracks or anything in the morning?
No, never did. It was hard packed dirt. It had been raining, but just the way that the land lays on that spot, it wasn't like deep mud or anything. And I don't recall that we even looked for tracks. We were more worried about packing up and getting on out of there.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, like, last week when we were up there in the Heber area, we found a couple of tracks. You could tell something, but we were looking for it. And these were, you had to look. And and go, okay, yeah, like we found the 15-inch track, 9 inches wide. Which is really cool. Then we found another, I want to say this was maybe 15 and a half, maybe 16 inches long track up, so we got 2 tracks up there we cast, and I'm still trying to clean them right now.
Well, I'm 38 now, and with age comes wisdom. And if I were in that situation again, there'd be a whole lot more, things that I would be looking for and looking into, and like looking for a track. Back then didn't care. Now I'd be like, hey, let's see if we can find a track. Where did this thing come from? Where did it go? Look around for, broken twigs and things like that. I'm on our search and rescue team here in Johnson County. And, we go out and we practice tracking and we practice looking for things. And I've picked up a lot of skill sets that I wouldn't have had when I was 18 to be dropped in a situation to, hey, let's go look around and see, is there any twigs broken? Is there any footprints? Is there any tracks, any indicator where it come from? Where did it go? Did it take anything with it? Was there any droppings? Just a whole lot different situation than the way it would have been when I was 18.
Well, here's the thing, too. When people have encounters, and including with me, still, with what I do and everything, it's the adrenaline sometimes. You skip over some of the small details, like you just said, looking for broken branches, looking for tracks. With my encounter that I had at Fort Hood, the infamous encounter, not one time that I think that next morning to go look for anything.
Right. That's
I didn't bother looking on the tank trail for tracks that had run down from when
adrenaline affects your judgment.
Yeah, and it really does. A lot of people don't realize that. So that's why when and I only ask these questions because sometimes when, people recount the story, it takes a question or two and they go, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, I did hear that. Or no, I didn't hear, like you with the breathing thing when I asked you about the sound.
Uh-huh.
So that's the only reason why I was just kind of curious whether or not you that morning, if you thought about it, and I understand completely for not looking and thinking about it.
No, the only tracks we were worried about is the tracks we were leaving headed out of there.
To get the hell out of Dodge.
Absolutely.
No, I don't blame you there at all. But that's kind of a scary encounter. You think about it, you're in camping, you're with your buddy, you're having a good time, and were you guys asleep when it started, or just getting ready to fall asleep?
I was awoken by the crash, boom, bang, and that's what I hollered at him. I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Dude, something's out there." I was like, what? And then you kind of have to wake up and shake the cobwebs out. And it's like, oh crap, yeah, there is something here. Where's the shotgun? Let's go see. And that was my mentality. I'm not going to just hide in a tent. I'm going to fight to the death if I have my way. But luckily, it didn't come to that.
Well, that's a good mentality. I mean, a lot of people though, and it's fair. I mean, get scared in these situations. What I love to hear is people be like, well, what you should have done. And my answer to everybody is like, well, you should have been there.
Absolutely.
So don't tell me what I should have done when you should have been there. And if you weren't there, then because I never, I've talked to a couple of people and, about coming to the show and that share their encounters and they don't come on, but it literally scared them. And these are big time. I've talked to a couple of hunters that have quit hunting.
Yeah, there's some people here that live close to me that are from Louisiana, and they claim to have seen, a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot on an island down there deer hunting, and that they had a friend that saw something, and it was a big time deer hunter, lived and breathed it, and hadn't been hunting since. And this was 25 years ago, so you hear stuff like that, but until you're in that situation, I don't guess you absolutely understand what they saw or the fear that came over them or however that goes, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention the guy's name because he's just a fan of the show, so I know he's listening. But he's part of another team that does investigations here, and they're a great group of guys. They really are. But this guy he won't camp out at night with them. He'll be there at night, but he won't do anything solo, which is smart, to be honest with you. I don't think you should ever do anything solo in these expeditions by yourself. Too many 411 cases out there. But, this guy, but he's had enough to where he is still wanting to know, but scared to death.
Yeah, you want to know, but you don't want to know.
Yeah, Justin over there, Cryptids Corner, I was talking about in the intro, he's had one encounter, and he'll tell everybody, and he doesn't care what they say. I've seen one. I'm good. I don't ever want to see another one.
Yeah.
And then there's people like me, like, okay, I've seen one. Now I want to see more.
Right. I want to go talk to it.
Yeah. Let's sit down and have a beer. I want to know what's going on, man.
Yep.
So, I mean, and you still go to this area though, right?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And nothing ever since?
No, never seen anything. Hadn't been camping there since. I can't convince anybody to go with me after telling that story, but I would.
I'll go.
Hint, hint. You want to go out and sit in the woods? Come on, let's go.
I'll go. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Let's go. Well, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago too. Yeah, definitely. We'll get my calendar scheduled, and
And then the most, I guess, the most standoutish part of the entire thing was, okay, it ran through, and I came out of the tent, and it ran back through. Well, after it had passed me, and I felt, the wind off of it as it ran by. Then I started the four-wheeler with the headlights on, revved up the engine and everything that were pointing the direction that it would have went, and nothing. You could see for a good 50, 60 yards, and the thing didn't seem like it was running that fast. Where did it go? I felt like I should have been able to see it when I turned the lights on. I was ready to hit the lights and start blasting.
Okay, so we haven't really. I talked a little bit about this on my live show the other day. And on the last investigation that we did up there, we got some really big eye shine. And I've seen eye shine. I've seen deer shine. I've seen big cat shine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In IR light, I've seen human shine. This was huge. I mean, huge. And I remember it blinked at me, but it did. And I got to about 5 to 7 feet from it, trying to get, I'm moving up on it. And it just disappeared. There was no noise of it running off, no noise of anything. No
motion, no noise,
nothing.
No nothing.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and
how could something that big move that quiet?
And it was quiet because Chris caught it first, and he was tracking it, and then because he was telling me eye shine, and I ended up getting my white light on it because we had our red lamps on, and it was, I mean, it was pretty. It was gorgeous eye shine. Gorgeous eye shine. That bluish green?
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, super bright,
Oh,
like
God,
a diamond.
yeah. Yep. And then when it blinked at me, that's, and I was telling Talina about it the next day. I was like, I can still see it in my head. I can still see this thing blink at me. I got a good friend of mine. He's like, "Yeah, it's probably a bear. It's probably a mountain lion." I'm like, I don't think you understand. It did nothing. It was, where it was moving, and it was staring at us the whole entire time. The way it moved.
Yeah, almost makes it seem interdimensional or something, like they can just disappear.
Yeah, it put its head down and boom, it was gone. And yeah, and then of course the radio came alive for another sighting, and it was a very active night that night. A couple of weeks ago, which is really neat. I mean, we had a peeker. It kept peeking us from behind a tree, and it was on somebody else's property that we couldn't, cross over. But you could clearly see there was something there that just kind of kept peeking around the tree, and it very well could, I would say it was the people's property, but an old lady lives there, and she lives by herself, and she's not about 6 foot, 7 foot tall, and peeking around a tree. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So it's just, to me, for it to run off and not, it's how they do it is, of course, there's an interdimensional or, portals, and, I'm a big believer in interdimension and portals and everything, but, at the same time too, I got to figure out, I don't know.
And unless you've got a lot of facial hair or dark complexion or something, along with eye shine, you'll see some skin. Where if you're that close and all you see is eyes,
that was all we saw was eyes. Man,
it's got it covered up somehow.
Yeah, it was just eyes. And, Chris came over here Saturday night, and we were talking about it again. And he looked at me, he's like, he goes, he drew his weapon. And I was just like, I remember looking over, he has weapon drawn. I was like, no, I didn't feel threatened. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was more like, what are y'all doing? But I did play the Sierra Sounds right at dusk. I played it like 2 or 3 times on a big speaker into the area. So I was kind of curious to see what would happen.
Yeah. Man, that's definitely interesting. I think there's definitely something to some of this. We just don't have all the answers yet.
Yeah. So, all right, so you haven't been camping back, but you do go back up in the area.
Yeah, it's a very, very popular spot on the side of a ATV side-by-side trail. Everybody stops there. People ride horses up in there. It's a super popular spot.
Well, do we need to worry about like hunting season to go camp out there or no?
Not necessarily. It's kind of too much off of the beaten path, and it's the main thoroughfare up and down through that part of the mountain, so there's a lot of traffic through there during the daytime.
It is Arkansas, being a deer hunter, so I got to bring it up.
Being a deer hunter, out of that entire mountain, I would not pick there to hunt just because there's people that ride all year, all season in the wintertime, and, radio's blaring, hooting and hollering, and it's not an ideal spot on the side of one of those trails that close to go and deer hunt.
Okay. All right. And then, because, like you're saying, it is Arkansas. Because my theory in Arkansas, why we don't have an international airport here is because, if it flies, it dies. I'm just saying.
Right.
I love my duck hunters. But, that should be that should be the motto when you come into Arkansas. If it flies, it dies.
That's right. If it's brown, it's down.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun to go check that out and go check the area out. Like I said, we'll get together offline, and I'll get my calendar, and I got to go. I'm going back up there again in November. I'm not going anywhere in the heat. I'm not going to lie to you. Unless there's air conditioning, I'm not investigating anything.
Razor don't have AC, but
well, that's why I want to do it a little bit comfortable. I can wear pants and be comfortable. I don't mind a little chill. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, 70 during the day, 50s at night.
I'd be happy with that. Have a good fire going. We'll make sure the wood is dry. That's
ideally that way we can build a good fire.
Oh, definitely. But no, okay, so so you've had no other encounters or anything at all?
Not anything remarkable other than, I know when we were talking the other day, I was talking to you about when I used to deer hunt close to a creek bed.
That's what
here's something that sound like throwing rocks down a creek bed. Like if you picked up a rock the size of a basketball and threw it off of a crankbait into a dry creek bed, you know how the sound that a rock makes, clack, 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 clack. Used to hear that in one particular spot all the time. And as, just being curious, I'd get down, go look around the creek, couldn't find any rocks out of place, couldn't, see anything, hear anything, nothing, but never could make heads or tails of what that sound was.
And this happened all the time?
In one particular spot, it seemed like every morning that I would hunt that spot for several years, you would hear it at least once.
Is this spot anywhere near the other location?
It is, I'd have to sit and think. It's probably within 15 miles.
Okay.
20 miles, maybe. As the crow flies, it would be up and over a ridge. And, Mount Magazine's laid out. There's several tiers, as the mountain goes up.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Red Bench, Rich Mountain, and then Magazine and all that. This would have been at the foot of the very bottom, where the other spot is about halfway up. So there'd be a pretty good elevation difference. But as far as distance, I'll sit down on a map and I'll look at it and I'll text you that.
Okay, I'm just curious. And the rock sound was only happening in the mornings?
Yeah, I didn't deer hunt at that particular spot all day long.
Right.
So I wasn't out there midday or evening or anything, but it seemed like every morning that we'd hear that, it would be, 9, 10 o'clock. And I know when my dad was alive, he used to talk about hearing it, several years prior. Like, I've heard that before. I don't know what it is. Don't ask, don't care. Don't want to know.
There's a lot.
Just part of the woods,
There's a lot of that goes on in the woods. A lot of people hear, strange noises like that. They just aren't right. And they're just like, just part of the woods, just part of the woods, just part of the woods. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It is. But there's something making that noise, and there's something creating that. I don't know. That's cool though. I mean, yeah, because I know what you're talking about, the rock sound. You take a big rock, throw it down the rock. Yeah. I mean, who's never done as a kid? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's, and I was probably anywhere from 12 to 16 whenever we would hear that, and 14-year-old kid out in the woods with a gun by himself, what is that? Let's go see. Is that a deer? Yeah. And I would always get down and go look around and nothing.
Yeah, 14 years old, there's no way you'd have caught me just sitting still. I'd have been like,
no, that's why I couldn't. And yeah, I was always out running around, and we were in national forest. Sometimes there was other people there, sometimes there wouldn't. But we had this whole area. Yeah, that was just part of it. Dad would kick me out of the truck, go have fun. Go run around, whatever. Be back to the truck at X o'clock. And that was before cell phones. We had two-way radios sometimes, or walkie-talkies where we could talk back and forth. But for the most part, it was just go kill something. That was,
go have fun. Go
we
be a boy.
Something and we would eat it. We ate what we killed, and we didn't eat if we didn't kill something. Just part of it.
Man, I just keep going back to that. I mean, y'all during the tent and everything that happened, and that's. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Even with everything that I've been through, I would have been unnerved as well. Having it happen.
It was an experience.
I mean, it's I do know that like in Bald Knob, last year when I saw it, and I mean it was the rest of the day I we think maybe zapped with infrasound or something along those lines, but I know that for like days on end, I mean my sleep was off. I was having horrible nightmares. I mean to where me and Alan from Nevermore Hollows that same week actually had the same dream, which was weird. Yeah, he's out in Eastern. Yeah, he's in Eastern Tennessee. So and we ended up talking like a week later, and I was like, "Yeah, I had this weird dream," and I was telling him about it. And he goes, "No, I had a dream that you know what I mean."
Yeah, that's crazy. So
yeah, it was just a weird. It's where I do think there's something normal about these beings, but I think there's something also paranormal. Of course, the paranormal is something, we just haven't discovered it yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you look at how, the polar bear's fur is, how it's clear, it reflects the light stuff, or how,
Uh-huh.
octopus can go ahead and camouflage and blend themselves in, then we can do bioluminescent lights, I mean, I'll take a look at the, oh my gosh, my brain just went bye-bye. Wow. Okay. I can't believe my brain just took a dump. I'm picturing the platypus.
Okay.
Yeah, take a look at the platypus, And then, the other one, me and my little boy were talking about this morning. And it has blue blood, and it's got the blood has got rare properties to it and stuff like that. Me and my little boy were talking about this morning.
Yeah.
The heck am I talking? But there's so many things that are out there in our natural world that can do, I'm using my fingers for parentheses here, supernatural feats. And that's where, and so I just think these creatures are just one of those things that, science has yet to recognize. And there's more evidence of these creatures existing than there is evidence for them not to exist.
Yeah, I'd agree to that.
Too many tracks, too many eyewitnesses, and it's just, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me at all.
Okay, I'm on Google Earth right now. From the creek spot to the rock face, 5.31 miles.
That's pretty close.
That's our distance. It's closer than I thought it was. It's up and over a ridge and part of a mountain, but as the crow flies, it's 5.3 miles.
Good Lord. Wow, that's pretty close, though. That's really close.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was, like, this weekend, I was doing, me and Tony were going over the aerial view of the area, and I was tracking, doing a little bit more in depth. And it's funny how, you look and trying to, play off, we're trying to look at how these, creatures would move. And, I mean, there's a whole range of heavy forest up there.
That's what I'm looking at right now is, you draw the line between the 2 points. You intersect a gas well road at one point, but the rest of it, if you were to go on foot from one place to the other, that's definitely not the route that I would take. That's up and over a ridge and heavy, heavy, dense, thick forest, straight up and down.
Well,
not where I would go.
Well, they know better than us, and so when I go on my investigation, I try and tell my guys this, they have to take the path of least resistance just as much as we do.
Yeah.
They're gonna take game trails, and they're gonna make their own trails. What's really cool is the area that we were in is you can clearly see a game trail, and then what's neat is right beside it is a bigger trail.
Yeah.
And it's not a person trail, but it's a bigger, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
looking at this on the map, if I were trying to avoid people, find the center spot of this line and you're there. That's not where you're going to find people because that is super, super rough terrain. There's not ATV trails. There's not hiking trails. There's nothing but just up and down bluffs and let's see here. Yeah, it passes between where Wildman Twin Falls is. That's really, really heavy hill country right through there. So definitely not a populated area between these two.
And it's 5 miles away from that. That's what's cool.
Yeah, 5.5 miles. Yeah, between where I used to hear the rocks being thrown in the small creek bed to the rock face at the bottom of the bluff where we had that encounter that night.
I'm wondering if they're throwing the rocks, which is funny because I think they stalk hunters not to scare them or to harm them, but because they're looking for an easy meal.
Yeah.
I have not talked to one hunter who has not shot a deer, hit the deer, know you hit the deer. Deer jumps into the wood line. You wait, give it about 30 minutes or so, climb down, go look at the blood trail, follow the blood trail, and the blood trail disappears.
Yep.
No deer. It's just gone.
Yep, I know several people that have had that happen.
Yeah, and I think that that's what they're doing. They're waiting, and they know, and they hear that shot that gets their attention. And so maybe he was just bored throwing rocks.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe there was a deer there they were trying to chase to me. I always thought that if it was anything making the noise on purpose, that maybe it was trying to get me to leave.
Well, maybe. I
Because
mean,
it was,
well, that's where I think when the rock throwing when they're throwing rocks at us, that's what I think they're trying to do.
yeah, this wasn't necessarily throwing it at me, and the creek was far enough through the woods that you couldn't see it, but it was audible enough that it carried through the woods where you'd hear it, and it was blatantly obvious what it was. It's not like something fell out of the sky or whatever. It was and several times I'd went down there and thrown a rock down the creek myself. A football sized rock or a softball sized rock, throw it down through there, it makes the exact same noise. It's like, okay, what threw a rock? It's not like it's on a hill where one just magically rolled off the side. It's a fairly flat creek bed at the bottom of a ridge that just makes no sense.
Or somebody, yeah, something would physically have to pick a rock up and throw it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've picked a rock up, like I said, and rolled it down the, like you're bowling, roll it down the creek, and it makes the exact same noise. And that would leave me standing there going, what did that? I used to think it was my dad messing with me at sometimes, but there'd be times he'd drop me off and he'd go somewhere else. You'd hear the truck drive for forever, so I know it wasn't my dad. What the heck was it?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Sasquatch on that one as well.
Yeah. So that's a couple different times now that I've had something that there's no proof it was a Sasquatch, but I can't prove it wasn't. And it certainly doesn't check any boxes to be a normal animal that happens to live in that area.
Or normal behavior. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, especially the camping one.
Yep.
That's so cool. That is cool. Well, let me bring this in for a landing real quick, and only because either I like I told you earlier, started kind of coughing last night in the middle of the night. My throat keeps drying out on me. So
Can't have that.
oh god, sorry about that. But so what's your thoughts then on what you encountered? So we'll do your final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up from there. How's that sound?
Absolutely.
All right. So let's start with the. You were just talking about the creek. Let's go back to the creek. What do you think? And don't be afraid to come on out and say it. I mean, whatever. Just what's your when I ask you what do you think it was, first thing that popped into your head was
it was not a normal animal that lived in that area. Like I said, I've picked up a rock and been able to imitate the noise throwing a rock down a creek. A bear's not going to throw a rock. A deer's not going to throw a rock. It's not a squirrel dropping acorns. It had to have been something big enough to pick up a rock and throw it. And if it wasn't a person, the only thing in the woods that would resemble a person would be a Sasquatch.
Yeah, I agree on that one. Camping.
Same thing. I've been able to rule out everything that you would normally encounter: a mountain lion, a bear, even a coyote, or a wolf, or anything that you would normally come across in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas. Felt like it was taller than me. You might run across a bear every once in a while that on its back feet might be as tall as me. Going to be a pretty rare circumstance to have a normal sized black bear be well over 6 feet. And certainly not going to run fast enough to cause a whoosh of wind on its back feet. So that also, I can check all the boxes for what it wasn't. At the end of the day, it had to have been something tall enough and heavy on its feet to cause the sound that it did and the whoosh of air that I could feel when it come across. So again, all the indicators point toward Sasquatch.
Yeah, I actually think you did have a close encounter that night. And I really believe that the smoke from the fire is what drew it in.
Yeah, we didn't have any light from the fire, didn't have any, lanterns or anything like that lit up. All we had was a tent and some smoke.
Yeah, I think it was the smoke that honestly brought it in, because it had been raining, everything was wet, so it was a smoky fire, and that maybe it was having a Smokey the Bear moment. It was trying to help put it out, and when it come rushing up, y'all were still there, and that caught it off guard.
anything's possible.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know at all. Well, Andy, man, thank you for coming on the show and sharing that with me, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I don't share the story often because I often get people think I'm crazy or I'm just, using my imagination. So it's good to talk to somebody that actually listens and kind of understands and thinks, okay, well, yeah, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm with you. I run a podcast on this stuff. I mean, my aha encounter. I mean, I had people telling me, a whole bunch of, no, that never happened. And I get it completely, but I was there.
Yeah.
And I tell, I got in a conversation with somebody the other day, and they're like, well, the way I look at it, if there's no pictures, there's no audio, then there's no evidence. And I disagree. The eyewitness is the evidence. The person that had the encounter is the evidence.
Yeah. I can't prove to you that that's what it was by any means, but I also can't prove that it wasn't.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like I tell everybody, so I think, when I got growled at on the first expedition up there, I think that was a bobcat. Going back, playing some other sounds, looking at it, I couldn't tell you, what it was, but I could tell you what it was in a dog. And now looking at it, thinking it was a bobcat. So I can't per se. So now I'm thinking that first growl was a bobcat. Now, the second one, the huffing noises that we got, I was playing bear, I was playing deer, I was playing doe, I was playing, big cats, a whole bunch of noises to try and duplicate that one. And the one I could find was I can't remember the name of the monkey now, but it kind of made this whoop, whoop kind of sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was going, well, those are definitely not native to Arkansas. So, but that's what it sounded like. It was crazy. So,
I'll tell you a short, funny story before we hop off.
Please do.
I have been back to that spot, what we call the rock face here at the bottom of the bluff. Like I said, beautiful spot. Me and a cousin, another cousin, a couple of buddies, our families, we all took side by sides, one on a mountain trek one night. But we always had envisions of taking, like a computer backup and a couple of things and a projector and watching a movie out in the woods. So we wound up at the rock face one night and we strung up a sheet, like a projector screen, and we used audio. I've got a big sound system on my side by side, and we set up a projector and we used the audio and plugged everything in. And at the rock face, we watched Jurassic World one night, well after dark. It was 11, 12 o'clock before we left out of there. And of course it was loud and everything else. And, nobody came through while we were there. But if there ever was anybody that had stopped close by or anything like that, that they had to have heard us watching Jurassic World and probably thought, what in the hell is that? So if you
that sounds like fun.
If you get any calls from anybody that was up in the Mount Magazine area and heard a raptor or a Tyrannosaurus Rex or anything like that, we can debunk that because that was me.
That's great. What I want to do is, one day I want to get a pool. And then I want to, at night, put Jaws on and watch the original Jaws floating around in the pool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. Watch Shark Week while you're in the water, you know what I mean? I thought that'd be awesome.
Jurassic World in the woods in the middle of the night will make you look over your shoulder, I promise.
I bet it will. I saw Arachnophobia, the first movie, at the drive-in in Utah. And me and my buddy were sitting on the ground because we didn't want to watch Ghost. And so we walked over to the other side and we sat on the ground with the little speakers. And man, we kept checking ourselves for spiders. So
it's funny how your brain plays tricks on you.
I know. Well, that's why I tell everybody, when I go on investigations, I have to unplug my brain. Since I've been doing a lot of Sasquatch recently. So when I go to the Sally house, I got to get out of my head of Sasquatch and get into paranormal. And when I'm doing paranormal and I go into the woods again, it's weird because I'm like going, oh, was that an entity? No, stop.
What'd be cool is if you mix the two, find the ghost of Bigfoot.
Honestly, I bet it's out there. I really,
it's got to be. It just hasn't been 2 and 2 put together yet.
Yeah, I bet you're right. Exactly. Like somebody's like going, how come there's no ghost animals? And I went, well, what's a ghost?
Right.
And the guy goes, good point. I said, see, I don't know. You don't either. I don't know what it is. So, but all right. Well, Andy, man, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you for coming on the show. And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. And, for everybody else out there, if you do want to come to the show, don't forget drunkencryptids@gmail.com or on all your social media platforms. Shoot us a message. Myself or Tommy, and we'll get back with you. But, Andy, man, I tell you what, we'll be linking up. So stay on the line. I'll talk to you in just a second. But for everybody else,
Awesome.
everybody else out there, keep on squatching.